Something we've seen a lot of especially in 2024, and obviously we sit back and we don't know why these injuries have happened to mainly hamstrings and ACL, knee injuries. And if you want to stay up to date with the latest NRL injuries, do what I do. If you're not already, go to NRL Physio on Instagram, and this man has become a bit of our staple diet when it comes to the NRL each week. His name's Brian Seeney. He's the NRL Physio, and he joins us on Sportsday. How are you, Brian?
Very, very good. Good to be on.
No, thank you very much. I know that you're a very busy man with your own practice, and we'll talk about that a little bit later on, so you can give it a bit of a shout-out as well for any potential clients. But the NRL and the season. Now, we're going to talk about different injuries and how you think they may be occurring so rapidly and so often. But the length of the season, Brian, is it, we're looking at 27 rounds, 24 with buys, and then you got finals and origin on top of that, and then an international calendar as well. The wear and tear on the body with these athletes, it seems that injuries are occurring more often.
Yeah, I think there's a real argument. You hear a lot of chat around the NRL, different pundits and things talk about it's becoming a bit hard for teams to prepare for the season because players kind of need to have a certain amount of time off. Then they need a certain amount of time for pre-season, and then they've got 27 rounds plus, and it all just becomes a lot. And I think there's a real argument for shortening the season to allow the players adequate time off, but then allow a bit more time for that off-season preparation as well. Because I think that's definitely part of it. It is becoming hard for teams to adequately sort of prepare players' bodies for a 27-week season when it takes up so much of the year and then the off-season. I'm sure we'll talk about it a lot more, but players these days are just at a ridiculous amount of physical performance, both strength, agility, speed. So they're pushing their bodies to the limit of its capabilities week in and week out. And so if you do that over 27 weeks in the year, it's obviously going to present more opportunities for injury to occur.
Okay, so the follow-on from that is hamstrings. We've seen so many of them this year. And this year, Brian, we saw this I suppose, this space of about 7 or 8 weeks where it looked like every third or fourth player was going down with some sort of a hamstring injury. Now, I've got a very good friend of mine that is head of performance for one of the NHL, the major national hockey teams in America. And he contacted me and he said, I don't think it's, everyone's saying it's the grounds, everyone's saying it's the workload, everyone's saying it's the difference in boots, the variations. And he's saying, I think it's got something to do with the way that clubs are training. Is that got some credibility?
I think the hard thing about it is it's probably a combination of all the things you've just listed. I know with injuries and everything in and around the game, we try and look for one thing that's the definite cause. And obviously there's some factors that have more contribution than others. But I would say overall training is a massive part of it. Now, I would highly doubt that there is one type of training across the NRL that everyone is doing wrong, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
It would be very rare for that to happen, to have 17 professional clubs all doing something wrong that's causing their players to have hamstring injuries. But there would be different issues at different clubs where they're not implementing certain programs that might, help prevent these things. But then all those things you listed, the grounds, the workload, the boots, all of these things do contribute. And individual player factors as well are a big thing too. So, yeah, I think the hardest part of it is that it's very unlikely, even with the grounds, it's just very unlikely to be one factor across all of these injuries. There's going to be different components here and there. But, yeah, it's hard to pin it down on one thing because, there's so many clubs who are just unlikely to be all getting it wrong.
Yeah. Now, I suppose one of the real depressing parts of the season is promising young front rower Tommy Flegler, of course, fears that his career could be ending prematurely with his nerve injury to his shoulder. Apparently he's had surgery, could be 6 to another 12 months rehabilitation. What do we know about that nerve injury? Is it the same as what former West Tigers back rower had, Simon Dwyer, who we still see sitting in the box for the Tigers with a sling, his arm in a sling?
Yeah, so it's an injury to the same structure. So the nerves that run out of the neck down through your trap area and down into your shoulder and into your arm. So effectively the best way to describe it, it's like comparing, say, a hamstring partial tear versus a hamstring complete tear. So what Simon Dwyer has is a complete tear. So he tore those nerves off the spinal cord. So it's as bad as it gets. So it's never really happened in the NRL before, and it hasn't happened since either that we know of. So what Tom Flegler has is more like a strain or an irritation of those nerves. So still enough of an injury where he's required surgery, and his future is legitimately up in the air. It's an injury once again, like it's obviously happened to Simon Dwyer at the extreme end, but this is, in your moderate kind of area. A lot of injuries in this structure are like your stingers and your burners. So minor issues that players come back from in a week. So what we're dealing with Flegler really, and the Dolphins have come out and said it multiple times. They're like, look, this is new ground for us as well. It's an injury that we haven't come across before. So I think, while we're not sitting here being doom and gloom, it isn't an exaggeration to say that, everything is up in the air. He could be back next year. He could also need to retire as well. And it's because it's a really rare injury.
Wow. Now, local anaesthetic. We had one of our listeners during the week, Brian's mention about local anaesthetic in the joints. Could this be deemed a performance-enhancing drug, even though it's not on the banned substance list? Because Tommy Trebojevic is obviously injured. He's taking needles into his shoulder leading into the finals, and in that finals game against the Bulldogs. Local anaesthetic. I mean, one of our other listeners he said, no, it's not actually making you better than what you were previously. It's getting you back to where you naturally would be. Is that a fair argument? Yeah,
for me, and look, all of this stuff is fairly grey area, right? So you can have people with different opinions either way. For me, this is a pretty easy one in that it's not performance enhancing, it's performance restoring. So it restores you back. And to be honest with you, Steph, it doesn't restore to 100%. Like, you cannot put a local anaesthetic in a grade 3 AC joint and make it back to 100%. It's still going to be sore, and it's still not going to be better than what it was. The argument I always use when I talk about these is if you have a player on the day of the game who has a really bad migraine or he has really bad gastro, are we not allowing that player to have Panadol for that migraine? Are we not allowing them to have gastro stop for gastro? These are things that you're just restoring their physical performance back to normal. You're not pushing them, because even the player who's got the migraine or the gastro, they're not going to be above 100% because they took gastro stop or a Panadol. Just like a player who takes a pain-killing injection, they're not going to be better than 100%.
I thought I had gastro every time I played Gordon Tallis for some reason. I'm not quite sure. But, Campbell Graham, he's been missed the entire 2024 season for the Bunnies. Knee reconstructions, Brian. Now, when I was back playing, if you got a knee reco, they basically just wiped you out for anywhere from 10 to 12 months, realistically. You're not going to get back to your normal running at around 10 to 12 months. And now it looks as though that players are recuperating and rehabilitating a lot sooner with ACLs due to medical advancement. Is it fair to say that players are coming back a little bit sooner than what they have in the past?
Yeah, mate, I don't mean to fact check you with this one, but Campbell Graham has had a sternum reconstruction.
I did too, sorry.
So a little bit different. Yeah, no, that's all right, which, similar sort of thing, it's a long recovery, and we've only really seen sternum reconstruction once before in the NRL with Jack Bird. So it's a really rare injury, and because it's rare, once again, the return from this kind of injury is going to be quite varied. It's obviously worked out for Jack Bird, and he's back. I think Jack Bird's knees sort of affect him more than his sternum does these days. But I'd be pretty confident that Campbell Graham will be back to his best for the Bunnies, if not early next year, sort of by the middle of next season.
I was actually looking at my notes here, and I meant Tino Fasuamaleaui with the knee reco. So when it comes to knee recos, are we seeing the time off the field or time off the training paddock, is that starting to shorten a lot more when it comes to ACLs?
Yeah, I would actually argue, funnily enough, when you look at the stats, we've kind of extended out a little bit. We went from, if you go back probably 15, 20 years, there was a lot of guys 9 to 12 months. We went through a period probably between 2015 or early 2010s to late 2010s where guys were coming back pretty much bang on 6 months.
Yep.
pretty consistently, and it just wasn't going well for them performance-wise. We saw a lot of guys just coming back not at 100%. A lot of research has come out in that time to indicate that your risk of re-injury actually decreases quite significantly if you leave the return to 9 months. So for the last 2 seasons, most players have come back at around that 9-month mark. So it's extended out a little bit from that 6-month mark. And we've seen like efforts like Paddy Carrigan, who's just like your primo example of an ACL return, where he came back, was man of the series in Origin, just had one of the best years ever. First year back from an ACL. So I think it shows that taking that little bit of extra time, while it might seem like it costs you a lot at the time, like 3 months is a long time in footy terminology, I think for your performance and then like your obviously career moving forward in terms of re-injury risk, it's much more worth it.
I might be putting you on the spot here before we let you go, but when you're watching the NRL over the years you have, what's an injury that comes to mind where even you've gone and you've winced and gone, oh, that doesn't look good? Is there one that comes to mind?
It's always the ruptured testicles, mate. Every time. Always. I can't. It's the one thing, that's every bloke who, that's probably as stereotypical as it gets. But yeah, I remember Tommy did and had one a couple of years ago, and they showed the replay, and he just was made the tackle, and he ended up on the ground, and it was a complete accident, but the full weight of his knee, the player's knee, just went straight into Tommy Dearden's groin. And knowing that he ruptured his testicle, played out the rest of the game, that to me, I can't think of anything much worse, to be honest.
And so from a physio point of view, is there a lot of massage that has to go into that rehabilitation or not?
Thankfully, I don't specialise in that area, mate. I'll pass that one off.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, thanks very much. Really, actually, Val Holmes. Well, before we let you go, watching Val Holmes the other day, he scored that try. Adrenaline showed him get up and celebrate, and all of a sudden, adrenaline disappears, and you feel the injury straight away. But when the camera was on him, it was perfect for a person like you to have a look at the mechanics of it all. It looked like a sniper just shot him from the grandstand. Did you have a fear that it may have been some sort of Achilles injury at first?
No, I think that was something that I kind of had a bit of an issue with because it was clearly from my perspective not an Achilles or an ACL. It was clearly from when he scored 5 or 10 minutes earlier, and I felt really bad for fans that the commentary team you can understand because he did look like he got shot by a sniper, but there were so many fans out there who were stressing so hard, especially Dragons fans obviously because he's heading there next year, because they heard Achilles or ACL non-contact said on the commentary. And I was trying to get my post out as quickly as possible to be like, guys, do not stress. This is a fibular fracture is still not a nice injury, but it's also not like a 6 to 12 month injury. And it was pretty clear that it wasn't anything major. So yeah, that was definitely one where I think my analysis of those things provided quite a bit of value, because it was definitely quite clear from the get-go that it wasn't that from my perspective, but it obviously wasn't clear to a lot of other people who were watching.
Yeah, great stuff. Brian Seeney, NRL Physio on Instagram, got great following and has always got amazing insight into injuries and can give some relief to fans and also a lot more pain to fans when they look at the potential outcome. Hey, before we let you go, where have you located, Brian? What area are you in for your surgery?
Yeah, mate, Active Care Physio. We're at Capella Bar, Chermside and Victoria Point in Brisbane, and hopefully expanding even more in the next year or two. So, yeah, if you've got any sports injuries, musculoskeletal injuries, come and see us. We'll take care of you.
But if you've got a ruptured testicle, don't go anywhere near you. That's fine. Okay.
Yeah, stay away from that one, 100%.
Beautiful. Hey, thanks for joining us on Sportsday, Brian. Really appreciate it.
No worries, mate. It's good to be on.